Okay, so let's say that we want to get input from a user, right? So we're going to start out with doing our include. Okay, so we have our include. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to declare our main function, right? So every time we write a C program, we have to start off by declaring our main function first, okay? All right, so we have our main function. Our main function doesn't have any parameters coming in, so we're just going to go ahead and do void. Okay. All right, so now what we're going to do is we want to print out a statement, right? So we want to print out. Let's say we want the user to make a guess at a number, okay? And we want to print out, you guessed the number, and we want to, right now we don't know what they guessed, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to say you guessed the number, and we want to write that number in there. So we want to actually print back out the thing that they are guessing, okay? So we're going to leave that for now. So we have printf, and then you guess the number, and then we're going to put in that number. Okay, so we know that we want them to guess a number. When we take in their input, we have to have a place to store the number that they're going to guess, okay? So we're going to go ahead and declare a variable. All right, now a variable is basically you can think of a variable as a box with a name on it. So imagine we have this box, cardboard box, right, with a name on it. So, and a variable has to have a name, right? Okay, so in this case, we're going to call it number. Okay, so int number. So every variable has a type. This variable, the variable number has the type of integer, which is int is short for integer, okay? By defining what type a variable is, we're saying, okay, the variable number can only hold integers. That's it. It can't hold characters, it can't hold Boolean values, it can't hold strings, it can't hold decimals. It can only hold integers. Okay, so that's it. So we have a variable that can only hold integers. Okay? So that's our declaration. Okay, so we have a box. That box can only hold integers, and the name of that box is number. Okay, and we call the box a variable, right? Because it can hold any value inside of it. Okay, and then we can reference the value that's being held inside the box by the name on the box. Okay, so let's say that we wanted to we could say number equals 2. Okay, so in programming, the equal sign is an assignment. We're saying, hey, the variable number is now equal to 2. If I were to print out this, okay, so if I were to say I want to print out this number, I could say, okay, printf, I have an integer for you, so I have to tell printf what data type I'm sending it. So I'm saying, hey, I'm going to send you some integer, right? And then I tell printf, okay, take whatever value the variable number is and replace this %i with that value. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and compile main.c. Sorry, this time we're going to compile. Remember, it's scanf. Scanf.c. And we're going to compile it into a file called scanf. Enter. Whoop, and there was an error there, which I did not see. Oh, I always forget the semicolons. There we go. Okay, I can just hit up arrow to get back to my last thing. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and run scanf. Okay, and I get you guessed the number 2. Now I have a couple problems here. One is that you notice there's no line break there. Okay, so we need to add that line break at the end of the line for printf. Okay, and notice that the number now gets replaced. So we say you guessed the number 2 right here. All right, let's go ahead and compile it again just so we can see it a little bit better. So you up arrow to GCC scanfc-o scanf, and then we /scanf to run it. Okay, and we say you guessed the number 2, right? So we have an integer, right? So we have our declared an integer variable, a variable with a type integer. Okay, we assigned the value of 2 to that variable, and then we print it out with printf. We printed out a string of characters, and we said, hey, replace this %i with the value of the variable number. Okay, so now let's say that we want to get input from the user. What we do is we would use the command scanf. So scanf is going to allow us to get input from the user. So scanf, and scanf takes two arguments. Okay, the first argument tells us what type of data is coming in. So in this case, %i, and that's inside double quotes, comma, and then we can say where we're going to load in that data. So in this case, we're going to store whatever the user types in inside the variable number. Okay, so scanf, we say, hey scanf, you're going to get an integer, and you're going to take whatever the user types in, and you're going to store it in the variable called number. Okay, all right. Now we're not doing any checks here or anything. Okay, this is a basic use of scanf. Okay, so the user can type in anything. It may not, it may not be an integer, right? But we're going to assume that it's an integer for now, just for simplicity's sake. Okay, so we have scanf. So we're going to go ahead and recompile using GCC. Oop, I always forget those semicolons. We're going to recompile using GCC. And notice that what we get here is format %i expects argument int, and then we have a reference, right? So what we have here is we have basically a pointer value, right? So when you feed in an integer into scanf, it's expecting a pointer, not the actual value. Okay. And this changes. So if this was %s, we wouldn't use a pointer, okay? So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to put in just an ampersand before number, and that way we're using a reference to the variable, not the actual variable. Let's try to use that instead. Okay, yeah, we need to use the reference. So basically, what we're saying is, hey scanf, we're saying get the input from the user, and this is the address of the variable number. So this is the address in memory where the variable number is being stored. Okay, so but just realize, just for the time being, that based upon the type of value here, if it says, hey, you need to have, if it's expecting a pointer, right, that we need to go ahead and give it an address instead, all right? So, okay, so for integers, you need to have this ampersand in front of the variable name. For strings, you don't. For characters, you do. So just go on a case-by-case basis. In this case, we're using an integer, so we need to have this ampersand before the variable name. Okay, so this time it compiles just fine, and now we're going to go ahead and run it. Okay, and notice that it just leaves me hanging here. So basically, it's not saying anything to me. Okay, and let me go ahead, because I know how it's running. Basically, it ran down to line 5. It's running line 6. It's waiting for my input. I put 3, enter, and now it says you guess the number 3. So it stored the 3 into the number variable, and then printed out the value in number using printf. Okay, so let's go ahead right before this, and we're going to put in a prompt for the user, and we're just going to say guess a number. Okay, so we're going to say guess a number, so the user knows what to do. We recompile. We run the compile value. Now we have guess a number. I guess 4, and it says you guess 4. Okay, so there's a beginning for scanf. So that's the use of scanf here. There is a bit more to learn for scanf. So, for example, if we wanted to guess a name, let's say we wanted to guess a name, what we would do is we would do a character array. Okay, so say we want to guess a list of strings, right, or list of characters, right? We would go character for a character, and the character array would be some, it's some list, right? So it's like imagine an Excel spreadsheet with just a row, right? So we'd say how many spots in the list. Let's say there's 20. Okay. The scanf value for strings, so for character arrays, is %s, and we can add additionally, we can add some limit. So we can say, okay, only get the first 19 characters that the person types. Okay, so we go ahead and add a number in for %s. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to store it in name. We don't use the address in this case. Okay, so let's go ahead and we have to change it to name down here. And let's go ahead and compile that and see if it goes. Oop, and this was S, not I. Forgot to change it. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and run the program. Okay, guess a name. I guess Tim. It says you guess Tim. Okay, so this is where we're having them input a string of characters rather than an integer. So that's an example of that. So we have a character array named name. Okay, it has 20 spots, all of which each spot in the list is a character. Then we print f, guess a name, to give the user a prompt. And then we have scanf. We say, hey, go get a string. We're limiting that string to be 19 characters long. Once they type something in, we store it in the character array variable called name. Whatever so that's stored there, and then whatever they type in, we're printing back out using this printf with the %s to say string, and we're getting the value from name. Okay, best of luck.